The doors opened at 9 p.m. and by 10 p.m. there would be a choir of about 1,500 people quivering with excitement to be let in. They had it in writing: admission £1.5 before 11 p.m., 2.5 after. By 11 p.m. the place was jam-packed. By 11:15 the crowd was bare-chested. By midnight the heat and condensation were such that the first drops of warm, salty sweat would begin to rain down on the dance floor. Every club night in the UK had its own ritual, and the hacienda was no different. For the last 20 minutes, the DJ would only play classics. You could feel the tension building up. When the music stopped at 5 minutes to 2, the crowd felt incredibly frustrated. However, this frustration urged them to savor every minute that they had left. It was at that exact moment that you could reach out and almost touch the energy. It was almost religious, like a ritualistic mass. Every night built up to that last moment, 5 minutes before the end, when, after a moment of silence, the DJ would play the last record. Someday by C.C. Rogers. As someone who loves dancing, I swear that at that point, the whole club was experiencing pleasure close to an orgasmic high. As soon as the clock struck 2, we had no choice but to stop the music. The hacienda's main lights would be switched back on. What a countdown! From high up in the DJ booth, we could feel people's disappointment as they were stopped in their tracks. However, it was precisely the compulsory closure of clubs at 2 a.m. that made UK nightlife so legendary. There were, of course, alternatives such as illegal warehouse parties organized on the outskirts of the city, where every kind of music came together: reggae, house, electro, and US hip-hop. And be they black or white, students or scallies, they all converge with the same purpose: to carry on partying until dawn. The anarchic and positive spirit of warehouse parties, which involved finding and taking charge of a makeshift venue for several hours, laid the foundations for what a few months later would become the first rave parties. The way I saw it living up north, the impact of house music was upon the south of England was not the same as in the north. Of course, it still found fertile ground in London and took hold during the Summer of Love in 1988. The DJ and club promoter Nicky Holloway had been organizing trips for clubbers to the party island of Ibiza since 1984. And in 1987, a handful of the Ibiza contingent were making their way back with pockets stuffed full of ecstasy. Alongside the DJs Danny Rampling and Paul Oakenfold, Nicky Holloway organized the first house nights in London at the Waterman's Arts Centre, a stone's throw from Heathrow Airport. Then, on Danny Rampling's initiative, the same team started Shoom, probably the most emblematic and extreme of all London club nights. It exploded onto the London nightlife scene. More promoters started to surface in 1988, creating other nights, including Westworld, Delirium, and Spectrum. London-based Pirate Station were also making a huge contribution to the rise of house music. They were the nerve center, acting like a barometer, constantly monitoring new music trends. Their impact on British club culture was paramount. Thanks to the former pirate radio station Kiss FM, founded by Gordon Mack and Norman Jay in 1985, resident DJs Judge Jules and Paul Trouble Anderson broadcast house music to the masses. House music had now spread its roots right across the UK. There were clubs, DJs, music, radio programs, and all were poised to experience the first summer of love. On May 21, 1988, on the eve of the first summer of love, the hacienda was celebrating its 6th birthday. For the event, a huge ghost train was installed just in front of the club. I was celebrating my first year as resident at Zambur and was invited to DJ. Recognition that I had now been truly accepted as part of the family. At midnight, while Mike Pickering was playing, they staged a breathtaking firework display inside the club. Then it was Graham Park's turn to take the decks. For the last few years, Graham had been a major figure on the club scene in Nottingham, another northern stronghold, and was also a Hacienda resident, arguably one of the greatest UK DJs of the 90s. He had an outstanding mixing technique, an amazing capacity to choose exactly the right record for the right moment, and then ability to stay incredibly focused whatever happened. I remember one night when we'd had a lot to drink. He was mixing when, just as he was coming out of the mix, he mistakenly took the needle off the record. Dead silence. He just looked at the crowd, put the needle back on, started the record up again, masterfully scratching over it, and then threw his arms up into the air. The crowd went wild. On the night of the Hacienda's 6th birthday, once again, Graham Park did the most amazing set. At 2 a.m., when the lights came back on and the music stopped, a deep rumble seemed to be surging through the earth's crust. It was the roar of thousands of clubbers heralding the first summer of love. However, a simple phone call was about to put an end to my British escapades and change my life forever. It was a very ordinary day, and I was working at the restaurant when my mother ran to me that I had been called up for French national service in Paris on August 1st. I had never replied to the official letters, and now I was being called up and there was no getting out of it. My world was falling apart. National service, fuck. July 9, 1988, after only 10 months, Zambur was getting ready for its last dance. For the occasion, the Hacienda had invited the prestigious UK magazine ID and the DJ Mark Moore. Mark Moore, the wizard from the Mud Club, the first DJ that I was a true fan of, an artist to whom I owed everything during my time in London, who'd taught me about whole areas of music that I'd never known existed. And that night I was to play alongside him. Him being there was quite an event in local history, not because of his undisputed talent or the fact that a famous DJ was coming to town, but simply because it was exceptionally rare at that time for a DJ from London to be invited to play in Manchester. The last Zambur was a huge success. That night, Mike Moore told me that about 2 months later he would be playing at the Place in Paris as guest of honor at one of the Pyramids parties organized by a London-based sound system. I was about to ask him if he would be kind enough to put me on the guest list when he said, "You should come along and play some records." The following Wednesday, the first hot party, a new concept organized by Paul Collins, went down a storm. Manchester was the fever pitch. The summer of love was in full swing, and I was feeding off the amazing energy, knowing that at least I'd be able to take that back to France with me. But everything happened so fast that I didn't really have time to think about it. After the third hot party, I got down to organizing my departure. As I packed up my things, it was as if the wind was carrying Manchester's positive energy all the way to my house. As consolation, and because I had the distinct feeling that my savings were not going to be much use to me stationed at Molten Hair with the regiment of Chad, I splashed out on my first pair of Technics MK2 turntables. I left for France at the end of July 1988, and all I took with me were my decks, my records, a few mixtapes, and an Acid Tracks t-shirt.